Well, hello everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of this show. We're here, we're talking watches, we're going to get straight into it. Tom, what's piqued your interest this week?
Yeah, so I've been perusing the Rolex website, just looking for Christmas presents for people, I don't want to leave it too late, so I'm thinking like next day delivery, get, some gifts for people, because I'm a realistic guy.
It's for Christmas 2028, by which point your name will have been called on the waiting list.
And yeah. And also anything you say, you're not obligated to carry out after 5 years as well. So that's my rule anyway. So I was looking at the new watches of 2021 and there was something that really caught my eye. These new dials that Rolex are touting, and there's a couple of Datejust 36s and a Daytona meteorite dial. So we'll maybe come back to the meteorite in a bit, but the Datejust 36 has got a palm motif and a fluted motif, as they're being called by Rolex. And they struck me as being something a little bit different from Rolex. I know the Datejust has always been a bit of a canvas for Rolex in the past. It's somewhere where they kind of wig out a little bit with some designs. And also this year we've seen some colourful oyster perpetuals, which we've done a review on, some bright red and bright yellow dials, which made me, when I filmed them, really want a hot dog afterwards. But they've got the candy pink and the turquoise coral and things like that. And
yeah, that Tiffany blue. And
it seems like they're kind of pushing something. And what I guess what really struck me was, is this something Rolex is going for? And it kind of brought into my mind Grand Seiko, because we're big champions of Grand Seiko on the channel, and
hells yeah.
We especially like their dials. That's usually the main feature of a video whenever we have a Grand Seiko. And I wonder if this is something maybe Rolex is trying to do to kind of close the gap when it comes to the dial. Not that Rolex need to turn their guns on anyone or anything, because they're the big boys, but I just thought, maybe is this a push to kind of close the dial gap with Grand Seiko? Because they're kind of maybe they're a little bit worried, or maybe they're a little bit like put out or something. I don't know. Like,
I was going to say to crush the little man, but then Seiko is probably the largest watch manufacturer in the entire world.
Yeah, I'm projecting emotions onto corporations again, but you know what I mean. I wondered what your take on it was, and how you felt about these new watches.
That's a really interesting notion, actually, because there's something that I think we all love about Grand Seiko, and it's the dials. They are known for creating miniature works of art, and even my own SPG V245, it's not the most Grand Seiko-y dial, but that brush texture, it just adds another dimension to it, and it turns it from being just the canvas for the markers to be sat on into a canvas to communicate art with.
Yeah.
And from some of the shots that you've got before of the snowflake dial, when you get in close there, with the right angle and the right sound effects, you could well be looking at acres and acres of cold, snowy snowdrifts. And it takes you somewhere. And I wonder if Rolex is trying to capitalize on that. What I do think, though, there's something very emotive about those Grand Seiko dials. Be that very calm and serene snowflake, or the more aggressive and angular birch, or the spring dial from the spring collection. They all evoke a different feeling, whereas I find with the Rolex versions, they look nice.
I would agree. I think with most of the Grand Seiko dials, what they're going for is unmistakable. There are a few that are kind of maybe a little bit interpretive, but the snowflake and the white birch and those seasonal ones, you definitely get a sense of the what they're trying to interpret there or represent on those dials. But yeah, as you say, with the Datejusts, especially historically, I feel like they've just been like a little bit of fun, like a fun kind of deviation from what they've been doing. They've been all sorts of them there, you know, floral and pinstripe and walnut and things like that. Like, it never really felt like a vision or anything. It never really felt like they were trying to carry something through on the dial. Would you agree with that?
With perhaps the exception of the Mount Iwate dial, which, if I recall, you described as looking hairy. I definitely think the Grand Seiko dials do something deeper. But the thing is, the Rolex ones aren't anything new necessarily as a concept. They've always done interesting dials with their day dates and date justs. Some of the common ones that we've seen before are the linen dial, which has that feeling of material, obviously like linen, and the tapestry dial, and more recently perhaps the Jubilee, which has that Rolex motif engraved over and over again. But if you rewind even further back than that, you'll see some crazy stone dials as well. They actually used slices of stone like obsidian and an agate and things like that, and even tiger's eye, to create some very unique and very natural looking dials. And I think they've moved away from that a bit.
Yeah. Is this now what they're trying to do? Are they trying to evoke something now? Because that palm motif...
What's it got you feeling, Tom?
When I saw it, I was just like, I could wear that on holiday.
So do you imagine it advertised in the little catalogue that they have in the seat back? You think, oh, God, I forgot to buy my Rolex with a palm dial. Oh, I left mine at home. I'll buy one on the plane, tax free.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It immediately was just like, oh wow, that's taking me places. That could literally take me places. Like, that's something I'd want to wear out in the world. And I think there's something to be said about that. I don't know.
How about the execution? Because these look incredibly typically Rolex crisp to me. So the fluted motif, which reminds me of the Lamborghini hexagon pattern. Go and look at any picture of a modern Lamborghini and you'll see that hexagon pattern just all over.
Right.
Perhaps even a honeycomb. But it's the palm one that's really catching my eye, because it's not a thing of nature. It's not evoking nature with shape and form. It is very crisp. It's very modern looking, but it's also very clearly palm leaves.
Yeah.
How are they making this one?
This is what kind of led me down the Grand Seiko comparison, is because... But this is etched onto an already sunburst dial with a femtosecond laser, which is a laser traditionally used in sort of cataract laser eye surgery. But what this does is short laser bursts, and I think femtosecond is 1/1,000,000 of a billionth of a second.
Right.
So short, tiny laser bursts to etch in this pattern onto the dial. And this is something that Rolex is doing in-house. So it seems like something that they're committing to. It doesn't seem like, they haven't sent them away and been like, oh, let's have a couple of these. It seems like this is going to be something maybe that we're going to see more of going forward.
There are two kinds of organisations that I'm aware of that use lasers. One, the science and engineering industry.
Right.
For research and all that kind of stuff. Two, evil corporations.
Yeah.
The fact that Rolex are now shooting their dials with lasers is very... it feels very modern Rolex. It feels very kind of like... I don't want to say faceless, but everything Rolex does is very secretive and behind closed doors, behind fingerprint-locked, iris-scanning safe rooms.
Yeah, I think the femtosecond laser gun would sit very nicely next to all the part sorting robots and airlocks and retina scanners and stuff. It feels very modern Rolex. That was what intrigued me about it as well, is that it's so Rolex, and it seems to sort of sit at odds with what we kind of feel about Grand Seiko and how they make their dials. The picture they paint is one of like this artisanal approach. They use stamps to press the brass dials and then paint the textures over the top, which seems like a kind of archaic in the face of millionth of a billionth laser guns blasting on your dial.
Well, I do picture the Omega CEO strapped to a table with the Rolex CEO blasting a femtosecond laser at him, all in a bid to get the James Bond contract back.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of summarizes the essence of how I feel about these two dials. The Grand Seiko feels like the imperfect creation of a person, and the Rolex variation feels like the very perfect creation of a machine. Not that it doesn't look nice, but one feels a bit more cold and the other feels a bit more human.
So do you see this? Do you see these motifs just kind of sitting in there with the rest of the kind of wacky date just retrospective, or do you think this is a push?
Well, I've got a theory. I think interesting dials are generally becoming more popular.
Yeah.
In the watch industry as a whole.
Right.
It used to be, and this is not just true of the watch industry. It used to be that everything was various shades of grey. And then that movie was made and everyone wanted to disassociate from that.
Directly associated the change.
But you see now, for example, the last generation of BMWs and Mercedes and Porsches were all different shades of grey, and now you can buy them in all sorts of wacky colours. The latest and last Patek Nautilus 5711 is a Tiffany dial in Tiffany blue.
Yeah.
Like, this thing is brown, it's radioactive.
Yeah.
And that precedes the hand grenade Nautilus with that deep green dial, that very muddy green. So I think this is a natural evolution of what people want from watches. They want to have a bit more fun with them.
Sure.
They want to have a collection that they can pick and choose, like, what socks am I going to wear today? I'm going to wear my Simpsons socks, or am I going to wear my whatever?
Yeah.
This is that. This is what we're seeing. Not just the luxury watch, but the luxury of choice.
Simpsons socks and Tiffany dial. All the way.
Exactly. What a combo.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is just a global trend then. It's not specifically... Because the other thing that strikes me about it as well is it could be conceived as Rolex have gone, tremendous upheaval to kind of secure and implement this technology and, these femtosecond lasers. This is very, very high-tech equipment, and they've implemented it and installed it into their manufacturing lines. And they've done all this work and they've done all this research, and then they finally got to the point, it's like, oh, so what do you want to do with it? And the CEO of Rolex has looked around his office and seen a palm in the corner and the parquet flooring and gone, palm motif and fluted motif. And that's what we've got.
I really hope that's true. I hope it's such an enormous spend spent so arbitrarily.
I don't know, that seems harsh. But at the same time, it kind of, like, I'm definitely getting a push-me-pull-you feeling with these watches and how I'm kind of reacting to them. It's like, on one thing, I think it's really exciting, and I think, I'd love to see more than that. Like, especially that the palm motif. I think, it does give me some sort of Grand Seiko vibes, and even that fluted motif. When you really get in there, it looks almost like tiny bricks have been laid because of the precision of this laser cutting. It's really, really clever.
There's a multitude of textures in there, and even the divide between them has levels to it, doesn't it? I'm very keen to get one of these in and point the macro lens and see how much it differs to the CGI that Rolex shows us. Yeah.
Agreed. So maybe it's just a first step. They're just trying out these lasers. Maybe we'll see. Maybe they can do extraordinary things with them. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, or it's just another date just deviation, which we've seen before. Walnut. I was looking at the walnut dial before, and just like the Oyster Perpetuals made me want a hot dog, the walnut one made me want a Guinness. And I don't even like Guinness.
I feel like it would be most appropriate to wear your walnut dialed Rolex whilst driving your very old Rolls Royce. The ones they find for weddings and things like that. Yeah,
it definitely. Yeah, that's the other thing. It definitely evoked some kind of dashboard. Vibes.
Old wealth, old money.
And cars that sound like this.
Another a piece of information that you said that I was particularly drawn to was the the specificity of the lasers being used for eye surgery.
Yeah.
And to draw parallels back to the evil corporation, are there children's hospitals for kids that can't see so good that are now going without because Rolex has furnished its factory with these very specific lasers for eyes?
No. Let's say that they made them themselves. It's the Rolex ones you couldn't use on eyes. They're just for dials. Those ones, they have no medical. They've been altered. Like, they just sort of look like the ones. So no. But what I think is funny is one of the things that's on my list if I ever win the lottery is to get laser eye surgery. Like it's too expensive. But I would like to get shot of these glasses. But now it's like, do I get laser eye surgery, or do I buy a Rolex with laser eye surgery?
Well, maybe you could work for Rolex, and it might become one of the perks of the job. Never mind booper cover.
Yeah, what? Just stand in the way.
Yeah.
Get out of the way! I'm trying to etch these dials. Get your head out of the way.
If you work for Rolex and you work on these lasers, pop your head in there. Let us know how it turns out.
Yeah, get yourself some free laser eye surgery. Working on all those tiny parts has got to strain your eyes. So, yeah, help yourself. You've earned it, Rolex worker.
Would you have a palm tree Rolex, Tom?
Yes. I would like that. I'd like that very much.
Okay, can I rephrase that?
Oh.
If you had to pay for one, would you have one?
Oh. Maybe, yeah. Do you know what, actually? Of all the Rolexes in the world, currently, I would say, yeah, that's pretty high on my list.
Would you have it over a Grand Seiko?
That's probably not. No. There was a Grand Seiko release this year, that Lake Sua. Did you see it? It's almost perfect, I think.
That is quite the watch. Yeah, they've done a number that they've listened to people. They've got that Crador inspired 5-day spring drive with the power reserve on the back, taking the power reserve off the front. It's taken them a while, but they've finally listened. Yeah. And then, so the dial looks like the Côte d'Azur to me. Yeah,
that blue lake surface with a little flash of gold and just so clean and perfect. But the palm motif, it's definitely a contender in my eyes for best watch ever around.
Wow. Okay. I feel like we should note this down somewhere and build a list of best watches ever around, as decided by Tom.
Yeah.
How much are we looking for the Rolex?
So the Datejust 36, with the palm motif and the fluted motif, of £5,650. Those motifs come in a range of colours. The palm has a silver and gold version, and the fluted one comes in gold and blue as well, although the blue's buried on their website, but it does exist.
Do you know what? I think Rolex have done themselves a bit of a disservice with their CGI.
Right.
Because when you actually see pictures of the real thing, because I've not seen one in for real yet.
Yeah.
The green, as it moves backwards and forwards, that sunburst pattern that's in there makes it shift from very dark green to very gold, which actually then, even though it is a very crisp and machine-like thing, that adds a sense of warmth that feels quite natural.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes Rolex's promotional imagery, it's sort of ultra glossy, ultra high finish, that it sort of gets into this uncanny valley kind of lawnmower man aesthetic, and and it starts to become you kind of think, oh, I'm just looking at some computer game here. This isn't a watch. Yeah. And the other thing, I don't think they're particularly marketing it that well. I mean, if it doesn't involve Roger Federer or sailing, they don't seem to give it any kind of visual push.
Yeah. I guess they don't need to, do they?
No, that's the thing.
Just under £6,000. It's a couple of £1,000s cheaper than that Grand Seiko you'd like. And as if by way to demonstrate how popular that palm dial is, it has appreciated by over double since its launch. So if you did want one, you probably can't have one anyway. So Grand Seiko it is. I'd love to know what you, our dear viewers and listeners, think on this. Grand Seiko or Rolex? Whose dials are better? Do you think Rolex is coming for Grand Seiko, and do you think it'll be effective? Do you think Rolex couldn't give a toffee? Let us know. And while you're at it, while you're down in the comments, you're so close to the subscribe button. So close. Just give it a little tickle. So we're just going to have a quick look at some of the comments that you've been posting. And I'd like to start off with an apology for a previous video. Thank you, John Wayne. As you've quite rightly pointed out, the bird that Thierry Nataf was holding was not an eagle. It was a falcon. Sorry.
Also, you can't use GPS underwater. Numbnuts. So Colin Cowell has a question, and he asks, so this is in reference to the Zenith Defy sapphires that we featured last week. So is the sapphire crystal really a good choice for a case material? Wouldn't it chip when dropped? That's a good question. I'm going to say yes, but what do you say, Andrew? You're the man with the facts.
Well, let's rewind back to the 60s when Omega offered NASA a sapphire version of its moonwatch to take on the Apollo missions. And NASA said no. NASA said, we would like plastic, please, because the plastic will scuff and scratch as opposed to the sapphire, because the sapphire would explode into a bazillion pieces and would get into all of the instruments like the ants did when Homer went to space.
They'll clog the instruments.
Exactly. So yeah, the thing is with sapphire, it's a bit like ceramic. It's a very, very hard material. And when things are very hard, it means they have a certain kind of strength, but they lose out in other ways. They also become very brittle. And brittle means that a point force will cause them to shatter, fragment very, very easily. So like a ceramic watch, a sapphire watch is more at risk of shattering. Yeah. A point force can fracture it and make it explode. How likely that is to happen? You do have to whack a sapphire crystal pretty hard to make it shatter.
Yeah. Do you reckon a banister slam could take your lug off?
Well, let's see if we can get some budget to buy one and try it out. But yeah, so sapphire as a case material is going to be a lot harder than steel, even the kind of 904 steel that Rolex uses, which is a bit harder than typical 316L steel. That is more likely to dent because it's softer than something like sapphire, which is the second hardest natural substance from diamond. But then again, you don't hear of diamonds and sapphire crystals generally shattering, so I feel like Zenith wouldn't have made a case out of sapphire, and other companies wouldn't have made a case out of sapphire if it's going to explode at the merest sneeze.
Yeah, I love that image, don't you? Someone holding their watch in a million pieces, think, why would they do that?
Yeah. That's something we can look into, actually. Maybe we'll try and ask some watch companies at what point does this explode.
Yeah, do they do endurance tests on these things?
Yeah. We've seen the odd photo of a ceramic case in pieces, but the internet's not littered with them. No. So I think that probably answers the question as to how fragile it is. And I would say more fragile than a steel case in terms of shattering, but not fragile enough that you need to be concerned. So Colin, absolutely go ahead and buy the Zenith. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Enjoy.
All right. Well, as always, if you do have questions, sling them our way. They can be about our personal lives. Anything. Just ask us some questions.
No. They have to be about watches. I'm not interested in whether Andrew likes hot sauce on his Wingos or Perry on his Nando's. It doesn't. No. Watches only.
The answer is I do like hot sauce on my Wingos. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up. So until next time.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe.